Hello, and welcome back to my channel. This is Jayla Olivia, mom in real life, and today I want to talk about things I did not realize before beginning my breastfeeding journey. Now, I'm a second-time mom, second-time breastfeeding. The first time I didn't get to make it a whole year. The second time, we'll see where we get. We're 10 months in. We might just make it. So the first thing I did not realize is that while breastfeeding is natural, it does not come naturally. I repeat, it does not come naturally. I was offered there's a couple classes you get to take before you have your baby, and one of them was about breastfeeding, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't need to take a class about breastfeeding. How can you teach me how to do a skill that I've never done without actually doing it? That was my thought process. I wish I had taken that class because I got my baby. She came out perfect, beautiful, lovely, so excited, filled with joy. The nurse said, go ahead and latch her. I put her on, and I just about forgot that that was my child. I felt like she clamped her little gums down and just bit my nipple. I was ready to cry. I was ready to be done. I'm like, nope, this is not for me. Not happening. Not gonna breastfeed. But of course, talked to the lactation consultant who came in after delivery. She kind of explained like how to get a proper latch and that when you breastfeed it shouldn't hurt. So I worked with her a little bit while I was there. Got a good latch going. As soon as I went home, it was like everything that we worked on just out the window. Didn't know anything. So while breastfeeding is natural, it does not come naturally. It is a skill that not only you have to learn, but baby has to learn. And you have to learn how to teach your baby how to, learn to latch properly, which is a process in itself. So I highly, highly recommend seeing a lactation consultant if you are like me and breastfeeding is just torturous at first. But it is overall a beautiful experience. It does not come naturally. The next thing I didn't realize about beginning my breastfeeding journey was not only the physical toll it would take on your body, but the mental and emotional toll that it would take on your body. Physically, it kind of made sense to me because you just had a baby. Babies literally can't do anything for themselves. They cry when they're hungry, when they're cold, when they're wet, when they're lonely, when they're too hot, when they're too cold. Like, it's so many different things that you have to attend to for this child. And then feeding it's like you have to use your own body to feed the child. So that's you getting up every 2 hours. And when they're cluster feeding, that's like sometimes every 30 minutes to an hour of just getting up, feeding the baby, burping the baby, setting the baby down, or cuddling, or whatever it is you do after you feed your baby. Just on repeat. That's why there's some mothers who have days where they don't even shower. I didn't necessarily ever go days, but I had at least a day where I'd be like, okay, it's been 24 hours and my butt has not seen soap and water. This is a problem. So that was one of the things you hear about it, but you're not really prepared for it until it happens. So the physical toll was a big one. But the biggest one for me, was the mental and emotional toll that it took on me. I definitely had some baby blues. I don't feel like I had postpartum depression, but it's very possible, honestly. With my daughter, I did experience what's known as antepartum depression, which is depression prior to the birth of the baby. I ended up having to have nurse visits like weekly, just to make sure that I was okay. I had just moved in with my then boyfriend, now husband, to a different city. I was farther away from family. Like, the only family that I had was my brother, who was going to college out here. And it was just really, really tough for me. Everything for me was new. I was new in a new city. I was new in a new job. I was new in a new experience with living with a man. I was new with being pregnant, new with the concept of being a mother. And then I had the nerve to add grad school on top of that. It was a lot going on, which would explain why I had all that. fast forward to after baby, like all those things were still going on. I had a little bit more of a grip of it, but not quite. I actually ended up moving back home with my parents for a little bit. And I feel like that probably did help, having that added support of having so much family around me. Not that my husband wasn't supportive. It was just having that village, especially during such a vulnerable time for me mentally. The next thing, so emotionally, I would sometimes feel like a failure, and that happens, especially with my daughter, who was the oldest. She ended up not regaining her birth weight within 2 weeks, so I'm freaking out. I'm thinking like, oh my god, I'm not producing enough milk to feed my baby, which wasn't necessarily the case. I had to work with a consultant some more about getting the proper latch. I thought she was feeding all this time, and she wasn't. And then, not to mention, she was a heavy sleeper, and I'm sleep deprived, so if she's sleeping, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let her sleep. She slept for about 5 hours straight. Newborn should not be sleeping for 5 hours straight. At least not until they regained their birth weight, which she hadn't done within those 2 weeks. So definitely felt like a failure, and I felt even more like a failure because I wanted to quit. But then also, when I gave her formula for the first time, I remember literally like bawling my eyes out about it, because I just felt so bad. Like, this is that one experience that I always wanted to do. And I know fed obviously is best, but I know the benefits of being able to provide your child breast milk if you can. And I felt like such a failure for one, not getting her to her birth weight, for two, feeling like I wanted to quit, for three, actually giving in and giving her formula. It was just, all of it was just an emotional roller coaster. Now with my son, the second born, it wasn't quite as stressful because I hadn't had experience. I kind of knew what things to look out for, but it was still stressful, but in a different way. With him, it was more of the physical and emotional toll. I don't feel like I had as much mental health stuff going on with him. I was in a much happier place. I was, for one, done with grad school, so that's a big stress relief. I was more comfortable in my job, more comfortable in the city that I lived in. I felt like my relationship was more solid since we had been living with each other for at least 2 years now, so it wasn't like this new thing. So I was definitely in a much better headspace with him. For me, it was more the physical and emotional. Like I said, you still get to experiences of like feeling like a failure. With him, he reached his birth weight rather quickly, but it was more of me just constantly battling with whether or not I want to quit or whether I want to continue. And every time I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to give him formula, I quit. Then feeling so guilty for doing it, and then also having such a desire to not quit, if that makes sense. It's just emotional roller coaster. So those were some of the things I just completely 100% was just not prepared for with breastfeeding. Hopefully that doesn't scare anybody away from breastfeeding, because it is a beautiful thing. It's a great bonding experience with your child. You're giving them lots of nutrients, and for some women, not all women, but for some women, it's a great way to lose some weight, get back down to almost pre-baby, supposedly. I did lose a few pounds, but I don't feel like that's the greatest benefit for me at this point. I think for me, it's more about just the bonding and knowing that I'm giving him something that was literally tailored for him. So yeah, those are some of the things that I was not prepared for when beginning my breastfeeding journey. Oh, hold on. One more thing. I was not prepared for the cost. While breastfeeding overall, I feel is cheaper than formula feeding, especially if you're going to like exclusively breastfeed. Sorry, I'm not used to having this much hair. Unless you're going to like exclusively breastfeed, as in latching baby onto you like all day, every day. You're going to be paying for bottles. If you're pumping, you're going to be paying for like storage bags or bottles, whichever it is you do. Replacement pump parts. The pump was cheaper because I got a free one through my insurance, but of course I had to go and buy my own pump, the MomCozy wearable one, which I will leave a link down below about it because I absolutely love it. Check out my review videos on it. It's a great addition to my supplies of breastfeeding materials. I also have the Free Independence, I believe, pump, which I love as well. I'll link that down below too if I can, which are great pieces to just add to a breastfeeding journey. So those were some additional costs, but overall the main costs are like bottles, replacement parts for your pumps because insurance does not cover that. Nipples, because as baby grows you should be replacing the nipples, and you should also be replacing them every so often. I forget how many months it is or weeks it is, like for sanitary reasons or something, I've heard. But yeah, that stuff adds up. Not as expensive as formula, but definitely adds up. So just keep that in mind. It's not completely free unless, like I said, you're latching baby on you all day, every day. But then you're probably going to be eating more, because I definitely had a little bit more of an appetite while breastfeeding. Alright, like I said, hopefully this doesn't scare you off from breastfeeding. If you found this video useful, entertaining, give me a like, comment down below something that you guys didn't expect with your breastfeeding journeys, or if you have any questions, you can add those too. Hope to see you guys in our next one. Bye.